Jonathan, hi, and welcome to the Business Growth Mindset
Hi, Christian.
Top Achievers podcast. It's so good to see you. We haven't caught up in a very long time.
Has been a while.
For anyone wondering how Jonathan and I have come to know each other, when I was the entrepreneur in resident at the University of Adelaide, Jonathan and his partners were venturing into their venture. Mm-hmm. And that was 3.5 years ago. And I am so excited to have you here today because you are not only an outstanding human being, but what you, Michelle and Don, have done is globally phenomenal, and it's changing the lives of many, many people, many women, many families, and I can't wait to share that with our audience. But more importantly, Jonathan, why don't you tell us a little bit more about you and the ventures? I say ventures rather than one as a singular, so as plural, that you're currently involved in, and some of the exciting things that are happening.
Cool. Well, should I start with myself or should I start with the company?
So start with you.
So I did my studies at the University of Adelaide as a physicist, and I worked in theoretical physics, particle physics, nuclear physics. That was my jam. I was all into fundamental science, and I still hold that strong feeling of like non-utilitarian philosophy. Like the best innovation comes out of thinking that's creative and fun rather than to do something that's a utility. And I'm a big believer of that. And I realized that as we went on and we did some great stuff, people really wanted to see medical innovations, and we had this centre that was funded, and I was a big fan of wanting to do something a bit different, step out into that cross-disciplinary area, that interdisciplinary area, and to get an exposure to industry. And just medical science and getting people from different backgrounds. You had computer science people, you had physicists, you had chemists, looking at a range of different medical problems. And this was an ARC-funded centre for nanoscale biophotonics. Mark Hutchinson's a great guy. Yeah. I was passionate to get involved, and we started looking at embryos in the fertility sector, and that's where this whole idea started for me. We were looking at embryos, we were using engineering methods to understand what is an embryo like from an engineering perspective, its resonances, its symmetries. And it's really hard within a large organisation like the university to really get out there and commercialise stuff. It's hard because you start down that pathway and then you realise there's all these barriers and things are really slow, and so we just had to find a way of how can we start this startup and get people passionate about it. And I talked to a number of people, the business school of Adelaide Uni in particular, Zorinka Tokic and her e-challenge program was amazing. ThinkLab does great work. We also talked to CSIRO. A long story short, we had this idea that people want non-invasive technologies for medical, and when you're talking about fertility, non-invasive is very important. They're human embryos. You're looking at the beginnings of life. You don't want toxic chemicals. You don't want high-powered lasers if you can help it. And if you can create something that's completely non-invasive. And then we realized we're thinking about computer vision. We were thinking about how can you look at microscope images using the latest computer vision technologies. And all of a sudden we had this idea we could make this application, a computer program. But now it's all cloud-based. So you could have this website and you just drag and drop embryo images onto the website and get an instant report as to the healthiness of the embryo. That was the idea. It was very, very hard to pull off. 5 patents later, it's an excruciatingly more difficult problem to solve than anyone had realized. But the IP we developed was so valuable that it had profound implications everywhere. The machine learning side was so difficult that we had to automate all of this with 20 years software, years of software experience, and our Andrew Murphy, who came on board and started building.
I was going to say, I remember you and Murph doing all of that work early on.
And so we built a factory, essentially, to create AI for medical problems. And this is like the vision which we had, the idea of Precigen as AI for healthcare. An idea of a company that can productionize creating medical AI that's regulated in a medical area. That's very difficult. pharmaceutical companies struggle with getting products out to market very fast because there's a regulatory pathway. If we can help productionize AI and repeat it and rewash into different areas, medical imaging is where we've been focusing on, especially in the fertility or FEMTECH sector. Fertility, starting with fertility, we looked at the healthiness of embryos. Will they lead to a pregnancy? We looked at AI genetics, so using AI to look at the genetics of an embryo without actually doing any gene sequencing whatsoever. Just from the image, you could tell whether it was genetically healthy. And now you've got a non-invasive technology to look at the genetics of an embryo. We're looking at human eggs and oocytes to see if they're healthy, and we developed so much intellectual property around what is medical data, what's good about it, what's bad about it, how do we make that data into a usable format. Lots of people have been struggling with that problem. AI is not scaling out there in the marketplace. People go out there and it doesn't work the way they thought it would. Stanford and Harvard make an AI that works for their hospitals, but it doesn't go anywhere else. It doesn't work in other settings. So how could we create like a decentralized AI, like a giant brain that could, instead of getting all the data to us, we send an algorithm to them, and then we don't even want to look at the data. And then the learnings from the data come back to us, and we reward all of our clinical partners and our collaborations with an incentivized business model so that they'll get a royalty
Is that
for their
across
data.
Precigen, or is that Life Whisperer?
No, that's across all of the products that we would do,
Wow.
Life Whisperer or otherwise. So the Life Whisperer brand of products, we craft that specifically for the fertility sector and have a pipeline across the fertility pipeline, and then we've got we can extend into further obstetrics and gynecological problems and issues with other female incident cancers, endometriosis, and we're only just getting started. Some of those projects
how many
in the
different
future.
streams are you currently negotiating?
Well, we've got two AI products. Well, I would want to say they're all in the same product, but they're done. They're ready out to market. Live Whisperer Genetics is live for a few months in over 30 countries.
It's phenomenal.
It's regulated as a medical product, so we have been out there and across our 8 data centers. We use Amazon really heavily. So that's where we are now. We're just inviting people now into what's called a Precigen AI Open project for eggs. That is where we have a business model where the idea behind Precigen is that we invite collaborative partners to co-build with us, to contribute data so that we can work with their data. We don't want to see the private data at all. It's completely de-identified. We create the algorithms and then create products on top of that then give people better healthcare, better access to the best technology for healthcare. Clinics that contribute then win out as well because they helped build, they want to contribute. They want to feel like they're making a difference by contributing to a new product rather than just being told, here's a product. They want to be intellectually part of that. And so when people say, I want to make your algorithm better, we say, great, we've got a brand new project you can get in early. Join our project. So the idea behind Precigen is not just an AI factory, it's about building collaborative partnerships where we co-build new products. They might be in the Life Whisperer or fertility space, but we foresee that it can expand out into some of those other areas. Now we're only very preliminary down the track with some of those other areas, but we've already started with those networking conversations.
So how do you keep... And by the way, you know that I always love listening to you. Right? Your level of intellect blows my mind. It should also be noted that you've got 2 PhDs. Most people spend their life doing one. You went.
I did one.
2.
The other one was under a laureate program, so it was laureate PhDs. It was, and it's people don't know that it was an interesting strategic choice, but it was funded in a way that was like a non-tax piece of money that really helped. So it actually did give a financial base for me to explore some of these industry connections.
And I don't know how much you love exploring. And what I really enjoy when I speak to you, Jonathan, professionally rather than just through our friendship, is the amount of passion that you have for what you do. And the motivation for me to create a Top Achievers podcast on the back of the Growth Mindset podcast was because I wanted to demonstrate to the world that it doesn't matter who you are, your background, and your level of intellect. Top achievers have commonalities, right? And or even just listening to you now and thinking of the people that we filmed in the last few days, and I go, wow, there is this incredible commonality between people. And you're one of the younger members of the cohort. You've been very well honoured and recognised for your incredible gifts that you have, but also your ability to share your information. You do it so easily. You're also incredibly humble, which fascinates me, because you're what, MIT Innovator of the Year under 35. You've won the 40 under 40 Entrepreneurship Award. You guys have won, Steve Wozniacki gave you guys an award for Startup of the Year back, when was that? That was like 3 years ago. I mean,
yeah.
And the awards roll on. I mean, your partners, Michelle and Don, have they've been involved in the Entrepreneur of the Year programs. They've it's rather incredible, because all three of you and your team, Murph included, and you're all geniuses, and yet you work at such intensity, and it's a stigma, because people always say to me all the time, all these people that do AI and machine learning, and they're physicists and chemists, they're all nerds. I'm like, mate, you have no idea. These guys are not nerds. They're just really smart people that are also really bloody good at business. And I've seen you evolve, and it's a real privilege for me. And I just want you and I want to ask you this question, and that's why I wanted to just frame that. What do you see the value, right, that your current business, your ventures, bring to the world? What's that deep down value for you?
I love that question, and the way that you framed it was very interesting, and I'll tell you why. You mentioned some of these recognitions that we've had either as individuals or as a company, which is very interesting, because the irony is that we kind of got a lot of that recognition when we all quit our previous jobs and did this together. And essentially people thought at the time I was throwing away my career. Why are you doing this? You've already got a direction. Why would you shoot yourself in the foot and start again from scratch? It's going to be just as hard. But they didn't see that I was trying to do something different. Well, in academia, it's kind of like the hill is just as steep on all sides. So as soon as you go one side of the hill, why would you just go around the hill and then try to go up the other side? What they didn't realize that my intention wasn't actually to just move sideways and go on the same trajectory. And it's very interesting that by destroying or almost walking away from my career, that's when people said, that's an amazingly bold move, you've got a great career. And then all of these recognitions suddenly came when I threw away my career. So the irony is that a lot of those recognitions, which are not really achievements, those are recognitions that people are trying to back us and say, we agree with we like the direction you're going, please make good on it. So, the MIT Tech Review, that great organization, that's an alumni I'm immensely proud to be part of. And that will remain forever. But it's not, they're given as like, we like the direction you're going, but are you going to make good and make that change? The actual achievements themselves often boil down to doing really, really hard work for very long hours, at a high intensity. I look at how slow some workplaces are and how fast we are, and just the amount of time it would take weeks and months to do something. We would just be expected, we expect to do that in a day. We would expect of ourselves, I'm just going to get that done today, no matter what, no matter how long it takes. And so the hard working and intensity of you'd see the email inbox, they light up like crazy. We get through these things, and so I wanted to frame at least that those things are the building blocks for doing the achievements, which I haven't mentioned yet. Doing hard work that sometimes seems drab, sometimes it's just spreadsheets, sometimes it's this and that, but that is actually the real gold where you actually start to build what we're doing. And what we're doing is that we're providing better healthcare in very particular areas for people. I say particular areas because we chose quite constrained problems, very well-defined problems, and just implemented it really hard. So we implemented it as harder than other people would implement it. So rather than being fuzzy and we're going to solve cancer or something like that doesn't really make sense. What is a cancer? They're all different. It's not crisp enough. We chose to look at what is embryo viability to start with.
Do you know what it sounds like? I'm smiling and laughing because I've had the privilege really to see you guys go through this, particularly in the early days. But you treat problem solving like a PhD.
Yeah.
You know, how you really go right into a very, very specific area. And it's very unique because entrepreneurs don't do that. They normally want to solve a really big problem, but along the journey, they want to solve thousands of problems, and they lose their focus. And I think what makes you unique and the team is that you're very strict, and because you have this very, very clear focus, you're able to really solve that one problem that then blends itself or lends itself to solving many other problems. Because it's just this incredible intensity. I mean, I love it. I can feel it. I can feel it when you talk to me about it. And it's kind of like this incredible discipline. You know, like that's what I'm hearing, Jonathan. And I know you're an incredible celloist. You're a devoted Christian. There's so many things, but for you, it's discipline, right? You know, and I reflect a lot on Jim Collins's work, Good to Great, and you know, discipline people, discipline thought, discipline action. You know, they're the companies that in their research at Stanford went from good to great companies. And you are you and Cheryl, Don, and the team are a really good example of that. And it's such a beautiful thing to watch. It's like an orchestra playing. Everyone knows what they got to do. So when you put all that together, what is the value? What do you think the value of your business is to the world right now? Or sorry, not right now, but in the future.
The value that we're going to create.
Yeah, the value that you're creating.
So in terms of the business that we're creating, we're making AI healthcare affordable for everyone. What is AI healthcare? We mean that we've got AI products that are solving real challenges that no other method can solve. We're looking at images in a way that humans are not able to do consistently, reliably over millions and millions of different examples of images. People just get tired. It takes 10 years to train up a super expert professor, and then you can't have a million professors over in the world. So
can you explain that a little bit more? Because there'll be people listening that won't understand. I mean, I know it because I know your business.
Yeah.
But just explain what you meant by 10 years of trained hours, professors reading these diagrams or these photos, essentially, right, to determine the benefit number. Rather than me talk about it, just explain that quickly in layman's terms for the business people that have no idea how that process works.
So for any business to scale, including a medical business, people need to have controls and processes. Our world's becoming increasingly run by procedures and controls, and that makes a lot of sense as we have a larger population and we have to do things in a much more careful way, especially with political climates being able to have social media stuff everywhere. People need controls and processes. The thing about controls and procedures is that they're much better done by computers. Computers are better at doing them than we are. So you would have a trained doctor go into university, they would train for 4 years, 5 years, and then they might need to do a postgrad thing, 7 years. They might then do a PhD, potentially, if they want to go into research. That's another 3 or 4 years minimum. And then they might have to do some other qualifications to keep them up to standard. So you're talking about 10, 15 years, and if you want to be a super gun professor, it might really take all of your life and your career to become top of your game. That's a very big investment for that person. They get to be a very senior person who understands a lot about their field, and that's incredibly valuable. But then they're doing tasks that are procedures in a hospital or in like a doctor's workplace, forms and forms and forms. They really should be doing the inspirational things, talking to people. And if you can have something that takes away some of that paperwork from them and you start to solve a challenge, that they get to be freed up. But also, if you're expecting professors to do this and you're expecting, like with fertility on the rise at 12% per year, you're not going to be able to train up enough gun experts to be able to cover that. So how are you going to get expert knowledge? You need to scale it. People would often make courses or sell online material, like you learn a course and then you can disseminate that out. Teachers will often do that, they'll create a course. AI is almost another way of doing that. You're creating something that can scale because you can have the best embryologist in the world in your pocket. And then that can be helping to solve it. Now, it's not perfect, it only does one thing. It doesn't do all of the human things you need to do in life. It doesn't replace a person's job, but it does the boring bit that's procedural that has to be done the same way. It doesn't get tired. It doesn't get cranky in the morning. It doesn't revise the number because it feels guilty or sad. It does the bit that is procedural, best done by computers. And so that's where AI fits in. That's where expertise really needs to be, have all of those procedures taken away. Computers are good at doing that. And so that's where I see that there's an emphasis on healthcare being revised to become more personal, where the doctor's now freed up to be able to actually relate to a patient. Personalised healthcare, personalised medicine is a thing that is a real driver in today's society. People feel disempowered because they go to a doctor and they just see forms and the doctor's disengaged because they're doing all this paperwork. If they can spend some time with that person and that patient can actually feel that they have choice, they've got knowledge at their fingertips, they're not stonewalled and you don't get to understand. No, they actually get given the reports. They understand, oh, I know where my healthcare is. I know where my kids' healthcare is. I know where my eye doctor, I know where my fertility doctor is at with my health. They get some empowerment. And so it's really about empowerment for the patient. That's where personalised medicine comes in. And we see ourselves as one of the contributors towards this. There's very few players in the FEMTECH space working on this problem, and we are already one of the global players in this area.
Amazing, amazing. And I think that really demonstrates the level of discipline and thought that you guys are putting into what you're trying to achieve. And I know that you as an organisation, as a group of companies, you're now embarking on a new journey. You've got is it 6 offices around the world?
Yeah, we've got 6 locations at this current time.
And your partners have now moved permanently to the US, which brings a new series of challenges. We talked about it pre-recording, and you're absolutely an organisation to watch. And what I love the most is that you've really had a go at making it work in South Australia, from South Australia. Something that a lot of companies in your position would have not done. They would have easily walked away from South Australia early. And it's something that needs to be admired too, because it takes a lot of courage to stick it through here. So now I want to dive more into what makes you up, as in your fabric. So now we're going to dive to the uncomfortable part of the podcast.
Good. I love uncomfortable.
So and you know me well enough to know that I love making people become comfortable with being uncomfortable. So, Jonathan, what would you say? Or I guess, what was it that in your childhood you think shaped the type of business person that you're becoming today?
I was a late starter into the business world, so it's hard to connect those two things. I have an answer potentially, but I was going down the academic line. I was going to become a professor. I was going to do that the standard trajectory, and I loved the field I was in. I love fundamental science a lot. I still want to be involved. I love that, but you see, the things that drove me into business were a lot of different ideas to want to, help industry, to help solve some of these challenges where there was a lot of bureaucracy in a large organisation, and to kind of step out and hold different parts of the world. I've always loved intellectually satisfying problems and challenges. That's why I love physics, because it's got a lot of meat like that. Business for me was viewed as a boring, tax sort of thing. That's how I saw it. And I didn't really understand until I talked to people who were great business people who weren't trained in accounting or business. They were trained in arts and design. And Azrinka was a good example, most positive person. She actually, I credit her with giving me a different mindset as I walked into office and I told her about some of the ideas that I had. She encouraged me to do the risky one, and which ended up being what was the early stages of the Life Whisperer idea.
That was through the e-challenge.
That was through the Australian e-challenge program. But the way in which she did it is it was, the belief and understanding of how to do a problem when you're coming out of an organisation is the culture can really trap you, so you feel you can't do things. If it's a large organisation, you can't see the walls as to how to escape, and people have a fear that if they try to escape, when I say escape, they try to step out. that things will happen, bad things will happen. People will, it will become very difficult. And it's right. People come out of the woodwork and say lots of things when you try. And instead of saying like, it's hard, it's going to have a lot of challenges, probably legal challenges, IP, it might not even work. It's hard. It was like, oh, it's hard, it might not even work. Oh my gosh, there's like IP challenges, legal challenges. Oh, that's awesome. I've already started emailing this lawyer. Oh my God, this is so awesome. We're going to have a conversation.
That was brilliant. I love the way you looked at that.
Same beliefs about the facts, different attitude. See, the facts didn't change. Same beliefs about the facts, but the attitude was one of positivity, of let's do this. Oh my gosh, it's fun. It's play panels, it's colors, it's design. It's what Silicon Valley is probably famous for is these colorful app companies that come out, which is really a drive. It's a drive of frustration. For me, wanting to step out and find a new life outside of business is driven. Some of the best ideas driven by frustration. I can see app companies in Silicon Valley were probably young, very intelligent, disenfranchised people from some of the larger companies at the time, like IBM and Compaq, were ruling the roost. And you've got enough smart people around there disenfranchised, they will channel their frustration into creating new things, and then they realize that it's not just about solving this technical problem. Then they have to put on these hats and t-shirts and then go out there and do sales and marketing, and then they realize they have to get in touch with people. And if you solve a lot of these things in this pathway to reaching real people and do entrepreneurship, marketing, solving what they want, not what you want, which is really hard. You have to put yourself small and to see what they want. And so it must have been inside of me already for someone to draw it out. I don't think you can give that to a person. And the things I loved as a childhood were, I loved, things that are philosophical about the universe, things about maths, things about that were not the dry things you learn in school. And that's why I didn't like school very much. I did okay, but they didn't show you those philosophical things, or only a little bit. When I got to university, I had freedom. I could do whatever I wanted. I could choose any courses I wanted. And I filled it with like things about the universe, philosophical, pure maths. Are you telling me
that you didn't get like 100 out of 100 at school?
I was not that kid. I mean, I did okay. I pushed hard.
That blows me away.
I was not an A student. Everyone thinks that I might be because, I don't know, I guess they think, oh, you're one of those people that's like one of the A students. That was like, I might have been a low
I've known you a long time, and I would have always made that assumption that you were, because you are gifted. You are very passionate about what you do, but now it makes more sense because people that are passionate excel at what they do. And you made one really clear distinction. You didn't enjoy school because they didn't give you the freedom to explore what you were passionate about. It was almost a little too basic.
Yeah, and I actually do worse on some of the simple things, which is funny. I started uni, I did first year maths. I think I didn't fail, I got the low credit. I think I got over almost 100% or high 90% for quantum field theory, which has like 14 prerequisites at university. Because I loved it and I learned it and I cared about that. So it's funny, my trajectory was like, I start out terrible, and then when I get to the thing that I really wanted to do, suddenly that's so it's obvious that I do the hard thing. I'm good at the hard things, but not good at the simple things.
And I think that's exactly why you're on this podcast, because what it's demonstrating is you view any challenge as an opportunity. Top achievers, entrepreneurs, that's their growth mindset. Right? It's a form of a growth mindset where most people, when they see something difficult, they tend to wallow in fear and go, oh no, it's impossible, I can't do it. Whereas you look at it and go, I think I can break this. I think I can actually solve this. Somehow I will find a way. And
I can probably, sorry to interrupt, I can probably say that another way because you're completely right. When I see and it's like easy problems, or I'm just on this journey to do the mind-numbing things you have to do. That's when I start to feel, oh no, how do I escape? Is this the end of me? Like, but when I see like one glimmer, the glimmer of now finally I'm looking at something that even if you've got the 1% or fraction of 1% chance of solving, you've got something special. Now you're taking a look at the heart of the universe kind of thing. Like, that's the thing that I like. I feel like once you've got a problem in front of you that is, if you really solve it, that's like the final call. That is the final call of life. Whereas if you're in this just vague going through life to do, I mean, the chores are important, but you're just doing the dishes, you're doing this and that, and you've got to do all these things, and it's just, you can be crowded with all of that hecticness.
Yeah, and I think that's also a wonderful thing that you've just talked about there. Being able to work out what your priorities are to be able to achieve what you want to achieve. You know, it's all the white noise that can take us away from actually being able to do the things that we were born to do. You know, as I said to you, I think you have a lot of gifts, and you know, the universe is working in very mysterious ways for you in allowing you to be the very best version of who you want to be, but also who you were meant to be. And I think anyone listening, or for those listening, the really important part about anything you do is you've got to close out the white noise when you really want to achieve something, and the white noise is anything that takes you away from fulfilling your mission. And you know, the world is busy. You know, we all have social schedules. We all want that human interaction. We all want you know, shiny new things. They're all distractions. You know, we're not here for a long time. You know, I was just talking to my children the other day, and I was thinking to myself, wow, if I don't actually start taking care of myself, I ain't going to live another 20 years. And it's only when you get older you start to realize, hang on, I've actually got to do that. And then you kind of go, oh, how much damage have I already caused myself? And then you go, all this achievement without fulfillment doesn't make any sense. And that's the big thing that's coming through with what you're saying to me. And even, you know, for anyone that might be able to see the video rather than just listen to the audio, you aim for fulfillment. You don't aim for achievement. You know, when I said to you achievements, you then turn around and know recognition, right? And so for you, when you solve a complex problem and you embark on that journey, it's the fulfillment side that drives you. And you know, it's really interesting. I've had the privilege of interviewing hundreds of people, and the top people are all about fulfillment.
Wow.
It's never about achievement. Like, you know, it doesn't matter what I did in the past. It's what am I doing now that is contributing to my experience as a human being, right? Yeah, and I think yours is also universal. I think you've got an ambition to solve bigger problems that help so many more people. You know, just like mine is to change the world one person at a time, and you know, to influence people's mindset and be able to encourage them to do the things they don't want to do. You know, if we go back even to some of our mentoring sessions, and you know, it was about mobilizing people to go from A to B in the shortest path, but also one that was, you know, a learning experience at the same time.
I have to hand it to you. I didn't know that about myself.
Oh,
I never
really?
thought about myself as, well, I never would phrase it that way. The idea of that putting fulfillment, that was the thing that was driving me. I find it incredibly hard to, I spend a lot of time doing self-analysis, but don't always get that far with understanding.
That's why you enjoy our time.
Yeah, we see different things in me. So,
Yeah.
Or we
Look, I've been a massive admirer of you since the first time I met you, because you were just so raw to business. It was so new and entrepreneurship, but you were like a kid in a candy store, just lapping up everything that you could get your hands on. And now, it's only now in the last few years that I've really come to realize that you are very much about fulfillment. You know, and I think the great thing is that you've just identified with that in the podcast, and I think that's really special. You know, and I think you should explore that, is what I'm saying. I think there's so much there.
I think there is a sense of what's it called, like beginner's luck. Like when you start something new, you don't have the preconceptions, and so that's where you can sometimes make it. And because entrepreneurship is often about doing something different that people haven't done before, because we weren't trained in medical science. We had a lot of consultants help us on that front, but we didn't know the correct way to solve the problem. And so we actually solved it the way we would have solved it. And it didn't matter how many political lines we didn't see the lines. We didn't know that that's not the way. So we actually ended up solving a problem in a different way. And we wouldn't have done that if we'd been entrenched in the way everyone knows.
And look, you mentioned the word luck. As I said, I'm a massive fan of Jim Collins' work, and Jim Collins says, luck favours the persistent. And there's one thing that most, if not all, top achievers have in common, is that we kind of believe luck is there because we have to, right? Because we don't want to acknowledge the fact that we're just really hard workers who have got this incredible self-discipline to go after something that most people would go, it's too hard, right? And I think with you, Jonathan, you have always and will continue to be persistent in your approach. But you have a quality that I, for example, don't have, not at your level anyway, and that is incredible discipline, right? It's why you play the cello so well. It's why you love cooking, right? Most people won't know about this, but if you follow Jonathan on his social channels, you'll soon discover he is he wants to be a master chef. So if anyone at MasterChef Australia is listening, and you want to do some entrepreneurship, flairable cooking program, I highly encourage you to reach out to Jonathan.
Love cook curries.
Yeah, you do, but it's not just about cooking a curry. You've gone on a journey to cook a series of curries, right? And a series of things. Like even when you did your whole pasta thing, you don't just do it in a half measure. Like a lot of people know, and some don't know, that I was a well-recognised chef in Australia. And before I got into doing all the things that I did, I never had that discipline that you have. I just had a talent. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like I remember my grandparents when they taught me, my grandmothers in particular, and they always say to me, you have the hand of the chef, right? And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about, because I basically could grab ingredients and just instinctively know what would work in a pan, right? So I could grab anything in the fridge and just put it together. And I didn't realize until later on in life, that is actually a talent. You're born like that, knowing how to season, and then when I went to culinary school, it was like, wow, there's all these techniques that I didn't even know existed, and I got better, right? It was no different to when I went and did my MBA. People always said to me, you're already an established entrepreneur, successful person. I was an adjunct professor at the university, and everyone's like, what are you doing going to uni? And I'm like, there's stuff here I don't know, and you've got to have a passion for learning. And I think that's another commonality that you and I have. We're really passionate about learning. And to that end, I would like to know which book or books have greatly influenced your life. I mean, you like reading.
I do. You've asked such a hard question. I mean, I'm a big believer of doing Bible reading every morning. So I get a lot of passion out of doing that. I started reading it aloud. I think there's something special and magical about reading that aloud.
Have you read all the scriptures from end to end?
I have in the past, but digging into it takes some more time.
Yeah. You gone to Bible college, haven't you?
Sorry?
Have you done Bible college?
No.
Okay.
But we have an incredibly passionate community church group Encounter at Prospect, and it's a community-driven thing. I also want to say that there's lots of books I admire that we've had a lot of. I've got a mastermind group of friends out of different places in the United States, and we started to explore some of the old classics in personal development, like the Napoleon Hill books.
Yeah.
And we didn't start with the famous one. We actually started with the 15 Laws of Success. It was 16 in some versions.
Yeah, it's a very good book.
It's a big book that has some big ideas. Obviously, some of the science things in it are a bit outdated, but it has some incredibly insightful things about what qualities very many well-researched, thousands and thousands of great businessmen of the day had in common. I don't think people realise that there's popular PD books, and there's the great ones from the past actually had an incredible amount of research. I think it took 40 years or something like that I can't remember exactly how many years.
It was a lot. They invested a lot of time in those early books.
Yeah. And
Again, I look at, say, Napoleon Hill or Carnegie as the stewards of that kind of writing, and then Jim Collins is kind of the future. He's gone and done, I think it was 7 or 8 years of research, but with like 50 research assistants working on it. Whereas these guys back then, it was like 1 or 2 people working to pull all this information together. And it's quite amazing that you guys, and again, this goes back to disciplined people with disciplined thought, right? Like, setting up your own little mastermind with global players and going back and having a look at...
To correct you, I didn't set it up. I was invited in with a friend that I'd met through this Talent International. This was the one that you mentioned with Steve Wozniak from Apple. We met him, had private lunch. It was a wonderful experience. In Talent International, Richard Earl, who was CEO of that company, brought us to Silicon Valley to show us all these cool companies. And one of the co-winners, we were Asia Pacific, but from the US branch, Lane Fortenberry, he won the US for his company Grainster. He had a friend... Ed Diaz with his company Advancing X, which is about space training. Space is all what people are talking about now. So he just had a bunch of friends, Gatry as well, who worked in the financial sector, and there was just these 4 people, and we had this wonderful chemistry happening with it. And they so invited me. Let's say, like, we have a call every week. Let's just get talking. Let's have a mastermind.
That's amazing. And you guys have been doing that every single week.
Not missing many weeks. Yeah.
Wow. How long has that been going for? 3 years.
Probably since 2018.
Wow, and again, this goes back to my point: disciplined people, disciplined thought, disciplined action. It's amazing when you can pull your own research and then listen to other people and go, wow, look at the synergies here, look at the commonalities. So for you, a book, obviously 2 books that have made impact: reading scripture in the morning out loud, and then Napoleon Hill's 15 or 16 laws of success. Is there anything else?
I could mention a lot of books, though. I find it really hard to nail down things.
What about for someone who's established, who's stuck, right? Like,
you mean
someone who's in business? They've just ridden out the COVID environment, and they've plateaued and they kind of feel stuck and don't know where else to go. Is there a book that you would recommend for them to?
You mean if they're a business area? Like, for example, if they're a businessman and they're really in a state of wanting to break out to go to whatever a next level looks like for them. It's really hard. I just find that a lot of the principles that are in a lot of those great classic personal development books really stand you in good stead with regards to persistence. And so some of the other ones, I think and Grow Rich is a classic one that people love. So that's one that people will say. I think it's good. There was Nightingale as well, who had this famous YouTube. Tony Robbins as well is a person who I got into more recently because I didn't know any of that stuff, and then I recognized it in myself and my own journey. So when I came to listen to what he had to say, I knew that those things were true. So I not just books, but also podcasts or YouTube videos can be really powerful at helping from a business perspective. But really, I don't have a huge amount of the literature I read that's very business focused, because I think when you want to break out of business, you want to think about other things, and then that gives you the imagination to go back into a business setting.
So give us an example of something.
Before I go too much further, I wanted to at least say some of the imagination that I think is stirred up from people like Elon Musk and the work that he's done. I think he is a very interesting person as well, because he's not just a business magnate and entrepreneur, but he's also very focused not on revenues or making a quick buck, but building a future and having imagination, using imagination as a commodity that people resonate with so deeply. And seeing, and he's at pains to present himself also as not just I'm some kind of king of business person. He always puts himself. No, I'm the chief engineer. I'm in the engine room. So he will always try to and the way in which he approaches his work is also incredibly disciplined in the way that he approaches things, the way he talks on stage, I think there's a lot of value that the way people do things now in today's day and age tells you about what things are working, what things are getting through to people. And it seems like it's incredibly emotional driven things, and that's right, because emotion is part of how we think. It's part of how we arrive at any decision, is to take in information, experience it, and then collapse it down into some decisions that we make. And then a lot of emotions are part of that whole thing, so you can't cut that out of thing. I always think of reasoning is actually itself a kind of emotion. It's a meta emotion. Reasoning is taking in information and collapsing it down into a thing. It's the same thing. Your brain's doing the same thing.
Absolutely.
And so people don't know that about me. I think I'm a big believer that emotion is part of your reasoning.
And you invest a lot, again, because I have the privilege of knowing you invest a lot in yourself. You are a prolific learner, and you understand your own limitations. And so, but rather than looking at your limitations as something that's holding you back, you actually have been working really hard to go, hang on a minute, this limitation, it's a fixed mindset, I can actually keep going, right? And I can actually improve on this, because you're a firm believer that you can acquire and learn any skill, right? Like in the time that I've known you, I remember when you first met me.
What did I say?
you were almost petrified of just being able to step into that arena. And it was really interesting, because you had this self-limiting belief, but it wasn't. And I just remember looking at you and I'm like, you can do so much more. And you blossomed over not just in the time that we spent time together, but even later, even when you reached out to me and said, look, I really want to sit down and have some mentoring sessions with you, just randomly. I'm like, sure, let's do it, And there was so much value that came out of those sessions, because you're not a time waster, Jonathan. You're a person who values the time that they have, and you very much then go, you know what, I want to learn this, right? Now, you mentioned Elon, and I love the what you said, that using imagination, right, is so important. And yes, Elon can certainly use his imagination to create dreams for people who wouldn't otherwise know how to dream beyond that. So I'm not sure if he's your business hero, but do you have a business hero?
I don't want to say that I have a particular business hero, because I think also there's a danger with taking as someone, and you don't want to idolize other people, because people already have a Jobs and an Elon Musk, and the world has had these people. So you want to be your own thing and learn from them and what they have done. So I mean, I like to hear and to see the way that Elon works to transcend a lot of things, to reach people, to reach and inspire imagination. Even when he's talking about Bitcoin and Dogecoin and so, like on the news, he's having fun and he's inspiring people who's different.
Up his stock all the time.
But he's doing it in a way that people wouldn't have imagined. He's being able to talk about things to reach what why does it work at all? He tapped into some what lots of people are going through, and if I would talk to some other people, I think that. Although I love the story of Apple, has very interesting things. I think the story arc, as well as Steve Jobs and the things that he went through when he was, to understand, an incredibly tough person to work with and very ruthless in many ways. And then he went through this journey in which he lost everything. And I understand from the horse's mouth it wasn't quite as presented as an anti-hero. He really put himself in that position, in needlessly being adversarial on the board. CEO pushed him out of the company, and the board sided with the CEO, John Scully, at the time. And Jobs built himself up through working with Pixar, which was a small, ailing graphics company at the time, and became a billionaire. His story of personal development is one that's inspiring. He transformed himself into a person that could then see how to reach people and almost turn computers, which were the domain of the enthusiast in the 1970s. You had to be an enthusiast, and turned it into a consumer fashion product, which you've got people who are, buying their fun Apple Watch and as like a design thing. It transformed it into a kind of a glass house of consumerism in a way that...
I think the way you've just explained, so to me that's also one of my famous and most favourite transformations. The Apple story is a really good case study for anyone who wants to truly learn how you go from being an okay founder to a bloody great leader. Steve Jobs' transformation from 1.0 to 2.0, and the adversity that he faced, that was by, as you said, by his own volition. He did not need to create all that for him. But had he not done that, Apple would not be the great company it is today, because being kicked out of his own company, being put out to the abyss, made him actually have to work really hard on himself. And you sum that up brilliantly. I mean, I'm going to totally chop that bit out of the podcast and replay it, because a lot of people don't know the real, that real essence of transformation in the Steve Jobs journey. And I've personally have studied it, and I try and work to some of those disciplines now and say, well, how do I run not just a good company, how do I run a great company? How do I help my clients establish themselves as great companies as opposed to good companies? So I'm really glad that you brought that in and then actually explained it, because it's so much nicer hearing you explain it than me have to talk about it all the time. So, Jonathan, you're a person who clearly has habits, beliefs, and behaviours that drive you. Is there any particular habit or belief or behaviour that has dramatically improved your life? Or which habit or new belief?
I would say a number. I think I got to a point just as in terms of realizing that if I was going to succeed at doing the things that I need to do, I needed to become better. I need to become better at doing those things. What are those things? So I had to, it's part of that personal development journey where you have to look at the things that you're doing and then say, but what is it that actually makes this thing work? And often for me, it boiled down to your service. There's an idea of like being a servant leader that's quite popular in today's day and age. And I had to understand. I had to talk to some people and say, well, is it really the case, the common belief that being a jerk or being a bully is the thing that makes you a super macho leader? And I learned from talking to people that is not the case. It doesn't actually help. Even with regards to the jobs issue, I was understanding when talking to his co-founder, was that the case? When he was in that mode, the business decisions that were being made were not good business decisions. He was an incredibly talented a presenter, but the way in which you become a servant, almost by a servant of other people, you're the lowest tier when you're the highest tier. Like there's the upside down view that the leader is the one who's pulling things along and doing a lot of hard work and inspiring others rather than telling or doing a boss thing. And so I actually found that once I learned that, and I think there's a point that a lot of people get to, if they're entrepreneurs or not, they get to a point where they're just pushed against a wall and they have to make a decision. Do they go, I'm out, like this is terrible, it's just everything's on top of my head, there's too much stuff? Or do they go, this is terrible, but I'm with you, okay, let's do this. It's like a tilt, and you get into this tilt of the heart. And I found that if I get myself into that tilt, then I suddenly realized that that's what I needed to do. And then it's incredibly hard work throughout that.
It's really interesting that you raised servant leadership. It is becoming a very on-trend approach that's being taught everywhere. And I want to just give you some value here. And you're already there. You are also an authentic leader. Okay, really important. Now, authentic leadership combined with servant leadership translates to transformational leadership. I'm not sure if you're aware of how that all links up, but I'm sure you're going to go away from here and you're going to go read up on it, right? And if not, I've got some links for you.
I just write it down on my phone as a task.
I knew exactly
every time I get something ends up on a task list, it gets done sometime.
So, no, but I think this is going to be another evolution in your learning. And I guess for anyone listening, this is an area that I work with one-on-one with a lot of my senior executive clients. Is, and if you go back to Jim Collins's work, it's level 5 leadership. But the idea is that what you want to be able to do is not just base everything on service, but also authenticity is paramount. Now you're a very authentic human being. Now you combine those two things and all of a sudden you develop transformational leadership. Transformational leadership allows you to get that buy-in from everybody around you to achieve a common goal. And if you have a look at the great leaders of this time, you have a look at Jobs. Jobs, as later on in his life, built a company, right, that was not built around him anymore. It was built around everybody else. And that's why Apple has a legacy. Whereas Apple 1.0, there was no legacy. That thing was going downhill because without Jobs, it was built around him. You have a look at Lee Iacocca, another really good example. You know, from Daimler, from Ford Motor Company and Chrysler. You know, the company had huge profits, huge drive, but it was all around him. The whole company was based around him. And then when he didn't let go of the ship, you know, the whole ship crumbled and eventually it was sold out. You know, one of the best automotive companies in the world to a demise being sold to a German. I believe it was a German company in the end. And that was the Daimler part of it. So, you know, it's quite amazing how you've just been from talking about heroes to books to beliefs and behaviours. Business. I want to just come back to business. Business is not all flowers and rainbows, right? So what failure experience, and you know that I love talking about failure.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm sure you're expecting something to come up.
Yes.
What failure experience do you think has set you up for success?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. And I want to say that, it sounds like you shouldn't say that, but there's the most painful moments where we will especially when we're trying to solve some problem, those are the things that are the highest value intellectual property that we have. I'm not ashamed to say that. I absolutely believe that. The times in which we were like, this is going wrong, or something, we just don't understand what's going on, and we have to sit here and just work weekend after weekend to work out what is going on. Those are the crucial insights that are the most powerful things that we have as a company. Now, we don't have like 5 patents and various things for nothing. Like, those were because we kept running into a barrier. So at least in our business, when you're talking about healthcare, there's a problem where you do something and does it work? There's the first question. And then the next thing is, does it work the second time? Does it work for another clinic? And then once you get it to go through all of those gates and you've got it and it works for another clinic, does it work for a clinic that you've never seen before that has a different work practice? That's when, and so every single one of those barriers is something that we solved, and it required a completely different revolution of thought to be able to have. And so I want to say that the problems that we had sound like they're dry technical issues. It is not the case. I found a stunning realization that every time we thought there was a technical problem, it wasn't actually a technical problem at all. Almost always the technical problem was solved quite easily. It's almost always boils down to a kind of an emotional, personal, almost a mindset problem. You think it's technical, because we know when you get tired, you break stuff. Everyone knows that if you get tired and try and do a complicated task, you break, and then you get up in the morning and you realize that, oh my gosh, what I expected was completely unreasonable, and then I broke it again, and now I fixed it. What we found was that, the algorithms, the answers, were correct all along. Computers don't lie. It's shouting at you the answer. It's telling you exactly the truth. And all you need to do is just believe it and then realize that you need to flip your mindset on your head. And so what we actually found was that some of those painful things that seemed like failures, like how do we get this AI to scale to a new clinic, had to be solved by actually realizing that when the AI algorithm says it's not working, it's because it's not working. And it's correct, and you just need to remove the bit that was stopping it from working. And so we created this whole way of understanding quality data and data that hampers you and being able to identify it, being able to identify on the fly, or to be able to identify it before you even start using it. And so we ended up this whole area of data analysis. And it's like, we didn't set out to do data analysis, we set out to do healthcare challenges. But we realized that to solve that, we had to solve the data problem that no one else in the world was solving. Everyone was just throw more data at it, throw more, algorithms at this large data, and the problem with that is that in healthcare that doesn't work, because the problems of the data kill you faster than the large data set you have. So you actually need less data. You need a smaller and high quality data. So that was a really, really painful thing that took us ages. But once we'd cracked it, we suddenly realize that we'd solve actually a big problem that goes well beyond healthcare.
And it's wonderful to see that you've acknowledged that failures are opportunities to grow, are opportunities to scale, are opportunities to embark on new learnings. And more importantly, what I really love is that you've tied it back to emotion and mindset, because so many people fear failure. They have this fear. And then there's lots of people that fear success, which is also incredibly disabling for people. So I thank you for sharing that insight, because that's so well articulated. And I think for our listeners, especially those who may be facing a failure experience in their life right now, don't just need to listen to my old podcast where I talk about failure in that light, but now have another amazing person who's just spun it out. And the beauty about it is that you've been able to spin it out from a very technical position too, and tied back the emotional mindset requirements to be able to achieve it. And that leads me to my next question. And I know I'm just checking, we're almost out of time. I could talk to you about this stuff all day long. When you are overwhelmed or unfocused, Jonathan, what do you do to realign? What's your secret weapon?
You might not know this, but I'm a very introverted person, and I'm not comfortable at all with stages, public stuff. I mean, you probably do know.
Yeah.
I do need to retreat to myself in a very private place. It could be just on a walk, but it could be I need to book myself into a quiet retreat somewhere and spend like a good day very, very at peace. I don't think that's an uncommon thing for people to want. I think a lot of people need to do that. But I also find that I can do that at certain times. When the going gets really tough, like it's not like there was a challenge in the past, but it's happening right now, we've got to do this. I found that the best way to get through was to become more disciplined, like just for that period of time. Now, you can't sustain that level, but you just sustain it long enough to get over that hump. And so I found that if I'm getting up at 5, if I'm doing HIIT exercise, if I'm doing the intermittent fasting stuff, if I'm doing all of those discipline things just for that period, even if it's more than I could really sustain, just to get over that hump, just to channel everything, and then when it can relax once that challenge is over. I found that was necessary, because if you try and take the foot off the gas when things are going tough to give yourself a bit of breathing room at that time, like it doesn't quite, like the discipline actually gives you that help that you need. You want to give yourself comfort. You always be kind to yourself. I'm not saying you're merciless with yourself. I'm just saying that putting structures in place, the mind rests on those structures, and so you can relax it afterwards, but just getting through the hard bit.
I'm really glad that you added the second half to that, because when you said, I find a private place and find space, and I was like, bullshit, you wait until he rips the next line out. And it was brilliant, because you're like, you amp up the discipline, right? And for you, it's a combination of both those two things. And what I really love about the way you just frame that is you amp it up. But if you have a look at the things that you amped up, they are things that create that discipline, right? It's the fasting, it's it's the exercise, it's waking up earlier, it's getting into a really clear routine, right? Because therefore your mind has got clarity. Right? A lot of people don't realize that. Most people, when they fall into a rut, they start eating crap, they start drinking, they do all of those other things thinking they're the relaxants. Not the case. And that's what that was really insightful. Thank you for sharing.
And I personally have a lot of peaks and troughs. Like I have incredible intensity, and then it needs to, like I just can't keep. So in order to get through times where you do have to keep going, having some discipline thing that just at least keeps everything above board for a time is what worked for me.
And I love it, Jonathan. I really want to thank you for coming in today and spending the best part of at least way over an hour sharing your incredible insights, your business journey, your academic journey. I have no doubt that in the not too distant future, not only will you be a successful entrepreneur in terms of wealth and also the change and transformation you want to create in the world, but I think that you will become that professor that you were once thinking about, and possibly in a very different light. Very similar to, when I became an adjunct professor at Adelaide University, and I never expected that along my journey. I never thought that I would be recognised as an expert or thought leader in an area like entrepreneurship, commercialisation, innovation, because I was always a practitioner. And I think what you've demonstrated today is that despite the fact that your vision was to be an academic, you've gone into the world of being a practitioner. And I believe that you're going to serve the world in a much broader way than you ever thought you could as an academic. But I think there is a future for you in academia as well, because the world needs more people like you. And what blows me away is that you're still so young. You've got 10, 12 years on me in terms of what you can achieve, and you're already achieving a lot and being recognised for a lot. But it's the journey of fulfilment that I strongly believe is going to guide you in the right direction. And mate, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here today. There's things I've learned today about myself, and I always believe that that's what makes a wonderful conversation. It's the ability for the information to be shared with one another, where everybody wins. And so hopefully you've had some enlightenment. I've certainly have. Our listeners absolutely will thrive on the information that we've shared today. Is there anything you want to add before we say goodbye?
I just want to thank you, Christian. I love talking with you and having this opportunity to just talk in this open way where you can say things that you wouldn't normally say. I just love this forum that you've set up. So that's one I want to say.
I want to gig in that mastermind of yours. I'm just well, Jonathan, thank you so much, and we'll sign out there.
Yeah, thank you.